Hi everyone, in this video let us try to understand the different way of formatting the output. So in this video let us try to see the first way of formatting the output, that is dot format method. So before trying to understand the dot format method, let us try to understand what is happening in this line. So here in this line we are trying to initialize the variable a with the value 2, variable b with the value ccc which is a string, and variable c with the value 34.0 which is a floating point value, and variable d with the value true which is a boolean value. So when you try to observe the print statement in the second line, which is a default print statement or the standard print statement that we have seen earlier. So here what I'm trying to print is this line. I want to print this line. So how I am printing this line using the above line? Let us try to see that. Here hi a is, it's a string. So the string is printed as it is, and followed by a comma, a variable a, that is the value of the variable a is replaced here, that is 2. And here when I'm trying to, and then followed by a comma, I'm trying to print the string b is, which is a string, and it is replaced as it is here, and then followed by the comma, and then contains the variable b which is replaced by its content, that is ccc. In the same way we are trying to print the value of the c and the string d is and the value of the d here. So this is what the default way of printing the output. But when you try to observe this print statement, this is pretty clumsy. Why I am calling this as clumsy? Because here when you try to observe this print statement, we are trying to print the string that we want to print, and then followed by a variable that we want to print, and then followed by a string that we want to print, and then followed by commas, variable, and then the string, and then followed by comma, and then variable. So when you try to observe this is syntactically clumsy. So let us try to understand the different method, that is dot format method, which allows us to reduce this syntactical complexity. So here when you try to see the second output, which is similar to the, which is same, not similar, which is same as the first output. So when you try to observe the statements that produce these print statement, the first print statement is produced by this statement, which is a default print statement. Whereas the second print statement is produced by this second print statement, which is a dot format way of printing the statement. So what does this dot format way of printing the statement? Let us try to understand the concept. Here when you try to observe this print statement, instead of writing string followed by comma and then variable, the entire content here is enclosed, or entire content that we want to print is now enclosed between the double quotations as a string. Instead of writing this as the string followed by comma and then variable, we have written the entire content in a single string, and then followed by the dot format method, followed by a dot and then format method. What does this actually mean? And there are some curly braces here. What does these curly braces actually mean? There are two questions here, right? What does this dot format method mean, and what does this curly brackets means? And this dot format method here containing the variables that we have initialized here, why does these variables are passed to this dot format method? Let us try to understand everything in detail here. When you try to observe this dot format method, what happens is that here the first variable that is passed to this dot format method is variable a, that is 2. E is now replaced in this first curly bracket that we have written here. Here the curly bracket is now replaced with the variable a, that is 2. When you try to see the output, the same position of the curly bracket, the variable a is now replaced, and the second variable passed to this dot format method is replaced in this second curly bracket. So that's the reason we can see that the second curly bracket is now replaced with the value ccc, and this third variable which is written for, which is passed to the dot format method, is now replaced in this third curly bracket. So that's the reason the third curly bracket is now replaced with the value 34.0. And the same way, the fourth value that is passed to the dot format method is now replaced in the fourth curly bracket, that is 2. So this is how these curly brackets are replaced by the values that are passed to this dot format method in the same order as they are passed. So this is how we print some line in the dot format method. So when you try to see that this dot format method has pretty easy syntax than the previous print statement. So most of the time it is preferable to use dot format method instead of the standard print statement, because the output is same, but this helps us to enhance the way of writing the code. Now let us try to understand the various types of features this dot format method allows us to use. Here when you try to observe the line number 8, here when you try to see this line, we can see that the print statement or the string part is same as the string part in the previous case, but the only difference is that here the curly braces contain some values, but in the previous case we don't have any values in the curly braces. And this dot format syntax is also same as this dot format syntax, and we have passed the same values as it is in the previous case. Then there is a question, what does this values 0, 1, 2, 3 indicates? So these indicates indices. Then there is a question, what does indices mean? So to answer that, let us try to clear the screen first. Okay, here when you try to observe this dot format method tries to treat this first value that is passed to the dot format method as zeroth index value, and the second value passed to this dot format method as first index value, and the third value that is passed to this dot format method as second index value, and the fourth value that is passed to this dot format method as third index value. So when you try to see this first curly bracket containing the value 1, which indicates that replace this first curly bracket with the variable that is present at the index 1. So when you try to see the index 1, the variable that is present is b. So that's the reason this first curly bracket is now replaced with the variable b. And the second curly bracket contains the value 2, which means that replace this curly bracket with the variable that is present at the second index. So the variable that is present at the second index is c. So that's the reason the second flower bracket is now replaced with the variable c. Whereas this third curly bracket contains the value 0, which means replace the third curly bracket with the value that is present at the 0th position. The 0th position contains the variable a. So that's the reason the third bracket is now replaced with the variable a. Whereas in the fourth curly bracket, it contains the value 3, which means replace the bracket with the variable that is present at the third position, that is d. So that's the reason this value is replaced with d. So in this way, the dot format method allows us to replace the brackets in unordered fashion. Actually, why I am saying unordered fashion, let me show you that. So in the previous case, when you try to observe this dot format method, we are trying to replace the first value in the first curly bracket, second value in the second curly bracket, third value in the third curly bracket, and fourth value in the fourth curly bracket. Whereas in this case, we are not depending on the order that they are passed to this dot format method. Here we are depending upon the index values in which the variables are present. So that's the reason this allows us to replace the values in the order that we want. So this is the second feature that dot format method allows us to use. And now let us try to understand the third feature that the dot format method allows us to use. Here in this line number 9, we can see that we have initialized a variable a with the value 2, and we have initialized the variable b with the value 3. When you try to observe this print statement, here the print statement contains a string and two flower brackets which are containing the content a value and b value, and there is a question, what does this content actually means? So when you have question here, let us try to see the dot format method. Here the dot format method takes two values as inputs, first value and second value. The first value says a value is equal to a. What does this actually mean? And the second value says the b value is equal to b. So what does this actually mean? Whenever you found the content a value in these curly brackets, replace that content with the variable a. So that is the reason this, when you try to observe this curly bracket, we have the content a value which is replaced by the variable a, that is 2 in this output. And this b value is equal to b indicates whenever you found the content b value in this curly brackets, replace that b value with the variable b. So that is the reason we are getting the output 3 here, because we are trying to replace this b value content or this b value flower bracket with the variable b. Here the main idea is that whenever you found the content a value in this flower bracket, replace the content with the value a. Instead of writing this in this depending upon the index or depending upon the order, we are trying to fix the values. Whenever you have the content a value in this curly bracket, replace that value with the variable a. So we are trying to fix. So this is also called as key value feature of dot format method. Why it is called as key value feature? Because when you try to observe this example here, if you treat this as key and treat this equal to b as a value, so whenever you found the b value in the curly bracket, or whenever you found the key in this curly bracket, you try to replace it with corresponding value. So that is the reason we are also calling this approach or this feature as key value feature. Now let us try to see the fourth feature that dot format method offers us. Here when you try to observe this line number 6, we are initializing the variable b with the value 3334.4523. So here when you try to observe this, this is non-decimal and this is decimal value. This is non-decimal value and this is decimal value. So let us try to see the example here, which is if total each is called as floating point value. So when you try to see this output, the output contains the value of the b is and then a flower bracket and then dot format method which contains the b, which is similar to the previous first case. So what happens, this first value or the value that is passed to the dot format method should be replaced in this first flower bracket. But this flower bracket contains the value 0 colon 0.2f. What does this actually means? This 0 colon 0.2f indicates that keep the non-decimal value, that is 3334 as it is, and replace the 0.2f indicates that replace the decimal value by rounding it to 2 digits. This 2 indicates 2 digits. So replace this decimal value by rounding it to 2 digits, which means this 4523, when it is rounded to 2 digits, we will get 45. So that's the reason we are getting 3334.45. So what happens if we are having 0 colon 0.1f? This 0 indicates keep the non-decimal value as it is, that is 3334 as it is, and this 0.1f indicate column 0.1f indicates replace this decimal value 4523 with or by rounding the 4523 to one digit. So when you try to round the value 4523 to one digit, we will get zero point 0.5. So let me try to show you that output here. When you try to round the value to two digits, you got 0.45. When you try to round the value to one digit, let us try to see what will be the output. So when you try to round the value to one digit, you can see that the output is zero point 0.5 as we have discussed previously. So this is the another feature that the dot format method allows us to use in case of floating point value. We have to discuss one another format that is used to print the statement and some more attributes that the print statement allows us to use. Let us try to discuss that in the next video.